So when it comes to running gear, I really struggle to relate to the content that's on the internet. I often can't get away from the feeling that somebody's trying to sell me a product, or there's just too much emphasis on the gear and not actually on the benefit you're gonna get when you're running. And like personally, I find running gear pretty boring, but I do love what it enables me to do. Like, I couldn't have run a 100-mile ultramarathon without having the right gear. But at no point during that 100-mile race did I think about the gear that I was using. I was too busy enjoying the experience. But finding a new piece of gear can be pretty game-changing. And you don't need to spend a fortune on it. It just needs to be like the right piece of gear. So this video is going to be a bit different to your typical running gear video. I'm not going to tell you what brand is better than other brands because I don't know. I couldn't tell you what the difference is between a Salomon shoe and a Hoka shoe. So this is going to be a running gear video from the perspective of somebody who hates running gear but absolutely loves running. And to me, this is the sign of a really good piece of running gear, something that has been used way beyond what the brand would recommend, like used to the point where it's completely falling apart, and used to create some amazing memories. Like, I've worn this shoe for every single one of my ultramarathons so far, and I love it just because it works. So like, let's say you're brand new to running. As a new runner, the internet will try and sell you all kinds of random products. And I personally found it quite overwhelming when I first started running, looking at all the different options and all the different advice out there. And the internet's always pushing the latest and greatest and most expensive pieces of running gear. But if I was giving advice to myself when I was just starting out running, I would suggest two things. Firstly, a cheap pair of running shoes. Doesn't need to be anything special. I think these were like £50 from Nike and I still run in them 80% of my runs. Just find something that's comfortable, something that is just enjoyable to run in, but you do not need to spend a fortune. And secondly, I would recommend finding something that deals with chafe. When I first started running, I had massive issues where I'd come back from run and I'd have like really bad chafe in between my legs, to the point where sometimes I'd come back and I'd have blood dripping down my legs. It was really bad. And it's really quite simple to solve that problem. You just need some sort of item of clothing that's going to reduce that friction between the legs. So one option is just like a cheap base layer. Another option, I mean, I wear these on most of my runs. They're like sort of base layer boxer shorts, which just, again, it's a piece of material between your legs just to stop the rubbing. And if I'd have realized that early in my running journey, I would have had a lot less uncomfortable runs. And because of those things, I've never had to use like anti-chafe cream, even during like 100-mile ultramarathons in the heat. And that's it. You're new to running, need a cheap pair of running shoes and something that's just going to avoid chafe. At least that's what I would recommend to myself if I started running. And then just some cheap gym clothes. It doesn't really matter what you're wearing. And when it comes to like the amount of money you spend on running gear, I'm not opposed to spending a lot of money on gear if I can see a benefit from doing so. I'm not going to spend £400 on a pair of super shoes that you can only get one run out of, but I've spent more money than that on a Garmin because it does everything that I need for ultramarathons. Typically, I'll spend more on a product if I can see that it's going to last me years and years, and there's some specific value I'm going to get from spending extra money, whether that's comfort or function. When it comes to running shoes, I like to keep things pretty simple. Most of my runs are done in a cheap pair of Nike shoes. Nothing special, I just tend to buy their cheapest everyday running shoe and then wear it until it absolutely falls apart. But when I bought my first pair of trail shoes, like, it was a bit of a revelation. Being able to go out in the winter on wet, muddy trails and have complete grip, it is such a great experience. Just being able to go out in torrential rain in muddy fields and just feel like you can run comfortably without falling over. And again, with trail shoes, you just want to make sure they're comfortable, but also you want to make sure they've got good grip. Now, these were amazing for grip, but my current pair of trail shoes, actually the grip on the bottom isn't great, so I know that when it gets to winter I'm probably going to have to get a pair of trail shoes that have got proper lugs on the bottom to deal with like really bad conditions. So yeah, it is worth making sure that the trail shoes are appropriate for the type of trail running you're doing. And then a year ago I thought it might be worth investing in some shoes that are specifically designed for like road racing, something that's like got a bit more of an aggressive profile. I do all of my speed sessions in these and all of my road races, and actually having a shoe that's slightly more aggressive, pushes you onto the front foot, is so much better when you're doing like track sessions or when you're doing the road races. Yeah, from a running shoe perspective, I keep it simple. I have 3 pairs of running shoes and I do pretty much 70 or 80% of my running in those cheap Nike everyday running shoes. And in the last 7 years of running, I've probably only spent £500 on running shoes total. So I like my running shoes cheap, I like them comfortable, and I like them to last a really long time. If a certain model or brand falls apart after like 400, 500 kilometers, I'm never gonna buy it again. Now there's one piece of gear that I've been looking for quite a while, and I've really struggled to find the specific piece of gear. 6 months ago, we were on holiday in LA, and I wandered into the Patagonia store, and I finally found exactly what I wanted. Now these weren't cheap, and I would love if somebody could point me in the direction of a brand that does a pair of shorts just like this, that are a bit more affordable. But they're just a pair of plain black running shorts. But at the back, in the elastic, they've got a pocket for your phone, so I can slip my phone right in there. It's probably really hard to see because this is all black, but it's got a zip pocket for my phone at the back. So I know that I can run with that in my back pocket and it doesn't bounce around at all. And then around the sides, it's got pockets for these little pockets for gels, and I use these little pockets on the side for my keys. And it means that I can now go trail running at the weekend with gels, my phone, in my pockets, and not have to carry a vest or anything else, nothing in my hands. So yeah, having a pair of shorts with like lightweight, small running shorts that have got really good pockets has made a massive, massive difference. But yeah, if anyone knows like a good pair of running shorts with like an elastic zip pocket at the back for the phone that isn't crazy expensive, yeah, let me know. Like such a small piece of running gear, but it's actually made such a big difference to my running. And like I never used to run with my phone, but more recently I invested in a pair of running headphones, and they're bone conducting, so you can hear things around you when you're listening to something. But I'm currently trying to learn Swedish, and being able to listen to Swedish language podcasts whilst running has been really, really good for my progression in Swedish. And so now I need to carry my phone. Having the pocket and the phone in the back pocket has been game changing. But again, headphones are one of those things that when I first tried them like 6-7 years ago when I started running, the Bluetooth was so bad that I ended up just taking them back to the shop, and they kept falling out and they were uncomfortable. So I managed to get a good deal on these, like I think they're called like Shocks or something like that. And actually these work perfectly. The Bluetooth never cuts out, the sound is good enough, and yeah, it just does exactly what I need it to do. So yeah, I was quite surprised by these. Didn't think I would use them as much as I do, but actually I probably use them on like 60 or 70% of my runs now. So yeah, surprising investment that actually I've really quite enjoyed. I found in the past that quite often I've watched a video on YouTube or found a reviews website, and they've recommended a piece of gear and it's just been a complete disaster. Most of my running used to be in London, and because of the light pollution and the street lights, I never really needed a head torch. So when I finally realized that I was going to need a head torch, I bought this really cheap, like small, lightweight head torch. And as soon as I tried to use it out in the countryside, I realized it's no way near bright enough. And it made running in the dark quite treacherous, a bit dangerous. But when I finally bought a proper head torch that was really bright, and again, not that expensive, but just something that's like a lightweight head torch, being able to go running at night with a massive beam of light so you can see everything perfectly clear has been amazing. And just being able to like angle it down so you don't blind every person, so you can angle it at the ground rather than into people's faces. So yeah, I'd say that if you're running at night or you're going on like an ultra marathon, where you know you're going to be running at night, getting a decent head torch that actually makes that like nighttime running enjoyable, I think is really important. And actually, I'm totally comfortable running at night now with this head torch out in the countryside, which, you know, with that first one I bought, no chance. One of my more expensive purchases, what is the Salomon running vest, which I've used on all my ultras to carry all of my water bottles and all of my mandatory gear in. And I did spend a bit more money on this because I wanted something that was going to be comfortable. When I ran the South Downs Way 100, I wore this for 22 hours and at not once did I feel uncomfortable in it. I never had any rubbing, there was no sore patches. Having a vest like this that is comfortable is so important. You just don't want something that's heavy, full of gear and rubbing. And that's where I see, you know, something like this, I can't see myself ever replacing this unless it breaks or falls apart, which I think, you know, I've been running with this now for like 3 years and it's like it's brand new. So yeah, I think I've probably got another like 4 or 5 years out of this at least. So yeah, worth like investing in a decent running vest. The vest came with these soft flasks. Previously I'd always use like running bladders, which are fine when you're just out running and you're drinking from them, but as soon as you need to fill them up and replace them, it's an absolute pain. So like when you're doing ultramarathons, having soft flasks like this makes such a big difference because you can quickly just unscrew them, fill them back up with water, screw them back on and stick them back in your vest. For me, these have been so much better than the running bladders, specifically during these long ultra marathons where I'm having to refill my water. Another one of these things you always get told to buy when you're doing ultra marathons, because they're part of the mandatory gear, is a waterproof running jacket. So this is like a Salomon one and it's got tape seams, so it's super waterproof. But if you're out running in the rain and it's a reasonably warm day, you are not going to stay dry. You will sweat and you will be moist and sticky underneath. So if it's ever raining out in the summer, I would never wear this. What this is great for is when it's cold and when it's really wet. And then it's like, almost like a wetsuit. It keeps you warm and it's like a safety feature. But I only ever wear this in the winter when it's really cold and raining. I'd say it's just something to be aware of. Like for me, I spent a lot of money on this to get like a really high quality waterproof one. Probably wouldn't next time. I'd probably just try and find like a cheaper option that still was waterproof, but you know, not the most high-end running jacket in the world. This is super lightweight. That's the one benefit that I really appreciate. But yeah, it's not going to keep you dry in the wet. However, the best thing I ever purchased for running in the rain was a decent running hat. Just something that takes the water out of your eyes. So if it's ever raining out there, I will always whip out a decent running hat. And just being able to run without having rain going in your eyes, that's the way to make running in the rain enjoyable. Don't worry about waterproof jackets, just get a hat. Problem solved. And in terms of other running tech, like obviously I wear the Garmin. I've already made a video on this when I first bought it, and I've worn it literally every day for the last 2 years, and literally I still have no reason why I'd ever replace it. It's got a battery that will literally last for like 3 weeks, even with training. I'll go and do like an ultra marathon, like a 100 miler, and I'll get to the end and it'll still have loads of battery left. The maps on it as well does everything I need to do it, and it gives me a bunch of training metrics that tells me everything that I need to. My kind of philosophy with running watches is figure out what you need it for and then try and find the best, cheapest watch within that criteria. I went for this one specifically because it was the first one where the battery was good enough to deal with having maps on your watch for 100-mile races, 150-mile races. Now I could do massive ultra marathons with this watch and never really have to worry about the battery, which yeah, it's just one of those things that if you're doing a big event, it's just massively like peace of mind. And also I'm gonna have this watch for over 5 years easily, and therefore I'm definitely going to get the value, and hence why I spend so much money on it, because it really does make running an ultramarathon that much more enjoyable, that much easier. But yeah, over 7 years of running, I'd say those are the actual pieces of running gear that have made my running more enjoyable. I'd say like my biggest gripe with running gear with certain brands is probably the style. Like 90% of my clothes are black. Pretty much all of my running clothes are black. So when I look at certain brands like Hoka and Saucony, I just can't get over the color scheme of some of their shoes. Like if you're putting a pair of shoes out and you've got 15 different color styles, can't you just have one that is like plain black with just your logo in white? But yeah, that's probably like my biggest gripe with running gear. Yeah, there's loads and loads of stuff out there, but yeah, it's often the style is just too colourful. I'm not the most colourful person in the world, so yeah, maybe that's just me. But yeah, it's always been something that I've just looked at like Saucony and just thought, I'd like to try their shoes, but yeah, no, the colours aren't for me. But yeah, anyway, those are the pieces of running gear that for me, you know, actually make my running more enjoyable. You know, I've bought a bunch of things over the years that I've ended up never using again, or that have just been returned because they just I didn't see the value in them. But yeah, I like to keep things simple and stick with things that work. But yeah, let me know if there's any running gear that has been like a complete game changer for you. It'd be interesting to see if people have got like different lists of things, different things that have really made a big difference for them. But yeah, it'll probably be another few years before I make another video on running gear. Not my most favorite topic, so I apologize if this was a bit painful for people that are like really into running gear. But yeah, cheers for watching. All right, bye.